In Tbilisi, police went to great lengths to break up protests against the controversial law on foreign agents. The demonstrators, in turn, stormed the parliament building and even broke into the territory of the institution, but they were later dispersed by special forces. On Tuesday, the Georgian parliament passed the law on foreign agents in the third and final reading. This legislation is an attempt to show Georgian society that we are already, so to speak, part of the Soviet world, part of the Russian world. But we see that Georgian society does not accept this. And Georgian society is very clearly opposed to becoming part of that geopolitical force that has branded itself in the modern world as a killer. It's not about the idea of the law, but about the general order, the atmosphere. Everything that's happening here is a repressive machine. People in opposition or protesters who are caught near their homes are beaten up. In the evening, forces loyal to the authorities paste posters on the houses of media representatives, of NGOs, saying, "You're agents, spies, traitors," and everything of that sort. This is a Kremlin-like order. I would call it that. Protests have been ongoing in Tbilisi for a month now. They started right after the ruling Georgian Dream party submitted the foreign agents law for consideration, and parliamentary hearings have not been much calmer than street demonstrations. For example, ruling party MP Veto threw a bottle at the chairman of the United National Movement, Livan Kaviashvili, and a scuffle ensued. Before that, the leader of the opposition Citizens Party, Aleko Iliashvili, punched MP Mamuka Dinarzadze, the head of the Georgian Dream party, in the face. And on May 1st, opposition MPs were pelted with bottles and books. According to members of the opposition, the new Georgian law is very similar to Russia's 2012 legislation on so-called foreign agents. The Kremlin has used that law as a tool to suppress press freedom and clamp down on civil society, particularly against groups opposing Vladimir Putin. Georgian critics call the bill the Russia law. I think that this is a situation where the Kremlin is trying to gather smaller and weaker countries around itself, already taking advantage of the situation that is happening on the front in Ukraine, the geopolitical situation. That's it. They have nothing to lose. And new sanctions against Russia, what other sanctions should the world impose? What else can they do? Russia has nothing to lose. That's how the Kremlin is approaching this issue. On Tuesday, protesters began to gather near the Georgian parliament during the hearings. When the law was approved, the activists began making attempts to break through the metal fences that had been set up around the building. However, more than 100 security officers from different agencies, dressed in all black and wearing masks on their faces, came out to suppress the protest. They brutally beat the demonstrators and deployed water cannons. Special forces completely cut off the protesters from the building and blocked the central street, Rustaveli Avenue. As you can see, there are a lot of special forces here. Their vehicles are kept not too far away, but more and more protesters are filling up Rustaveli Avenue. According to eyewitnesses, law enforcement officials have detained several leaders of the protest movement. For example, David Katsarava, a well-known Georgian activist and the leader of the anti-occupation movement Strength and Unity, was taken into custody. It was later reported that Katsarava emerged badly beaten and was even hospitalized. In total, more than 13 people were detained on Tuesday. Today, in fact, there was a constitutional coup in Georgia, because this law directly contradicts Article 78 of the Georgian Constitution, the paragraph where it is directly written that all state structures are obliged to do everything necessary for Georgia's accession to the European Union and NATO. Most of all, I am standing here as a citizen of this country. Public organizations in various spheres, in different spheres, they are all subjected to this law as agents. So it's like serving the interests of another country. I think that if I work on the topic of deoccupation of Georgia, I won't be serving the interests of some other country. I think these are the interests, first of all, of my people and my country. EU and US leaders have repeatedly urged Georgia to refuse to consider the Kremlin-inspired bill. Now that it has been passed, the country's potential accession into the EU and NATO is in question. There can be a big reversal on the one hand in terms of visa liberalization. For now, all citizens of Georgia can visit EU states with our passports, the Schengen area specifically. But the visa-free regime may suffer. And, of course, financial assistance from the European Union may suffer. All these integration processes will be suspended, and the rest will follow. So to speak, the alienation of Georgia from this space of the European Union and NATO. Accordingly, this will later affect the economy of Georgia, because it will affect investment. The president of Georgia, Salome Zurabishvili, promised to veto the bill, but the ruling Georgian Dream Party will have enough votes in parliament to override her veto. If this happens, the law may receive final approval as early as mid-June. The president's veto is a formal, symbolic sign. In Georgia, the president doesn't have much power at all, almost none. But the president's vote is now very important as the voice of the most senior political official in the country. Not in fact, but in title, let's say, in terms of position. That's why this veto is going to happen. But the main actions will, of course, take place on the streets of Tbilisi.